Lucy's heart raced as she stumbled out of the dark, musty basement, her wrists still red and raw from the restraints. She'd done it. She'd slipped out when her kidnapper had left the basement door unlocked. Freedom was just within reach. But just as she reached the yard, she heard heavy footsteps approaching the door. Without a second thought, she made a split-second decision, running to the car in the driveway and jumping into the trunk, pulling it closed as quietly as she could. She pressed herself into the small, cramped space, hardly daring to breathe. And then her heart stopped as she heard him coming closer. There was a thud as he paused beside the car, clearly hearing something from inside. His footsteps circled the vehicle, and she could feel him right there, just inches away, hand reaching for the trunk handle. Hey, if you are as on edge as I am right now, make sure to hit the like button and subscribe for more stories of resilience and survival. Trust me, you're not going to want to miss what happens next. Lucy was an adventurous and curious 12-year-old, always eager to explore her surroundings. That afternoon, she'd stayed a little later at school for her art club, and by the time she left, dusk was beginning to settle over the quiet neighborhood. She decided to take a shortcut home, a small path that wound through a lightly wooded area. She'd walked it dozens of times before, but that night, something felt off. She sensed someone watching her. The feeling was subtle at first, a creeping chill that prickled at her skin. She glanced over her shoulder, but no one was there. Brushing it off as her imagination, she quickened her pace, but the feeling only grew stronger. And then, just as she turned a corner near an old fence, a shadow darted from behind her, and a hand clamped over her mouth. Her muffled scream was swallowed by the darkening woods as she was lifted off her feet and dragged to a waiting vehicle. The world blurred around her, and before she knew it, she was bound and locked in a small, cold room, a basement with barely any light, smelling of mold and dust. Panic and fear gripped her, but her mind raced, trying to find a way out. Her kidnapper, a man in his 40s with a hardened face, barely spoke to her. Each day he'd bring food and water, his eyes cold and unreadable. She quickly realized that escape was her only chance, and she paid close attention to every small detail of his routine. She noticed how he sometimes got careless, leaving things unlocked or distractedly setting objects down as he left the room. 4 days into her captivity, Lucy saw her chance. He had left the basement door open while talking on the phone, his attention clearly on the conversation. She managed to slip her hands free and bolted for the stairs. The door was open, and she darted through it, ignoring the pain in her feet as she sprinted outside. Freedom! But it was short-lived. She heard his footsteps coming back. She looked around, desperate for cover, and then she saw his car unlocked, parked in the driveway. Thinking quickly, she climbed into the trunk, pulling it shut just as he stepped outside. She curled up, listening to him approach, trying to calm her breathing. She knew if he found her, it would be over. She was trapped in a terrifying game of hide and seek, and her only hope was to stay hidden. Just as he was about to open the trunk, a sudden wail of sirens passed by on the main road nearby. His head snapped up, and Lucy felt the car shift as he backed away from the trunk. The police were probably unrelated, but the sound made him hesitate. He muttered something to himself and got into the driver's seat instead, turning on the ignition and pulling out of the driveway. As the car moved, Lucy steadied her breathing. She reached into her pocket, feeling for her small, outdated cell phone. It wasn't much, but it had just enough charge to send a quick, desperate message. She quickly typed, "Help, I am in a trunk, license plate XES123," and sent it to her mom, praying that her weak signal would hold. She didn't know where he was taking her, but she knew it was likely somewhere far worse than where she'd been. But then a flicker of hope ignited in her. Maybe the message had gone through, or maybe someone was on their way. As the car sped down the highway, she tapped on the trunk's metal, sending a rhythmic beat that she hoped would catch someone's attention if they drove close enough. In a nearby town, Lucy's mother's phone buzzed. She had been in a frenzy ever since her daughter disappeared, barely sleeping, hoping for a miracle. When she saw the message, her heart dropped, and she immediately called 911, relaying the message word for word. "Please, she's somewhere on the highway in a black sedan with license plate XES123. You have to find her," she begged, her voice breaking. Within minutes, police cars were dispatched, combing through the nearby highways. A dispatcher put out an alert, notifying all units to be on the lookout for the vehicle. Lucy's captor, oblivious to the message sent from the trunk, continued driving, his mind racing with his own twisted plans. Meanwhile, in the trunk, Lucy continued her tapping, hoping someone would notice. Her heart pounded each time a car pulled up close, but they would pass by, unaware of the terror hidden inside. Until finally a red SUV drove up alongside. Inside was a family returning from a day out. The father, distractedly glancing at the road, noticed something odd, a faint, rhythmic tapping noise. She turned to his wife, who shrugged, but as he looked closer, he noticed a hand pressing briefly against the rear of the trunk. "Did you see that?" he whispered urgently. The mother, eyes wide, turned to look, and her face paled as she too caught sight of the hand. "Oh my God, there's someone in there," she gasped. Without hesitation, they slowed down, staying close enough to keep an eye on the car while calling 911. So the dispatcher directed them to stay with the car until police arrived. Within minutes, the faint sound of sirens grew louder as police cars converged from all directions, creating a roadblock ahead. Lucy's captor saw the flashing lights up ahead and realized too late that he'd been caught. In a desperate attempt to escape, he veered off to the side, trying to swerve around the barricade, but the police closed in, surrounding him on all sides. Realizing he had no way out, he slammed on the brakes, coming to a sudden halt. The police officers quickly exited their cars, guns drawn, as they ordered him to step out of the vehicle. He hesitated for a moment before raising his hands and stepping out, his expression twisted in anger and defeat. Officers immediately handcuffed him and moved him away from the car. With bated breath, one of the officers approached the trunk, carefully opening it. Inside, Lucy lay curled up, her face pale but determined. When she saw the officer's face, relief flooded over her, and tears filled her eyes. She was safe. She was finally safe. So the officer gently helped her out of the trunk, wrapping a blanket around her as she clung to him, overwhelmed. Other officers shielded her from the sight of her captor being led away in cuffs, ensuring she wouldn't have to see him ever again. In the days that followed, Lucy's story became a beacon of hope and resilience. Her bravery and quick thinking had saved her life. People across the community praised the alert driver who had noticed her signal and the police officers who had acted swiftly to bring her to safety. Lucy's family held her close, never letting her out of their sight again. Her story served as a powerful reminder of the importance of vigilance, bravery, and community. If Lucy's courage inspires you, don't forget to like this video and subscribe for more real-life stories of resilience and survival. Join our community and let's keep these stories alive. Together, we can spread hope and strength to those who need it.